Good afternoon. It's Monday, the 18th of February 2019, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Mike Robinson. Joining me in the studio once again is Patrick Henningsen from 21st Century Wire. Welcome to the programme, Patrick.
Great to be with you, Mike.
We're going to get straight on, Patrick, with the Munich Security Conference taking place over the weekend. Well, many of the headlines in the mainstream press suggesting that the international rules-based order is falling apart because of what appears to be an increasing split between Europe and the United States. Let's have a look and see what they were talking about. The report from the Munich Security Conference says this: the Trump administration displays an irritating enthusiasm for strongmen across the globe and disdain for international institutions and agreements. This follows, a conference in Warsaw in Poland. This was a US organized conference to organize against Iran. So that happened, I think, Wednesday, Thursday last week. And Mike Pence there, the vice president, had urged France and Germany and the UK to abandon the Iranian nuclear deal. And at Munich on Saturday then, Angela Merkel basically threw those comments back at Mike Pence. She said that the Iranian deal can help countries pressure Iran over issues that the US might be concerned about, for example, the ballistic missile development and Iran's role in Syria and Yemen. So, Patrick, I thought we'd just have a brief look at the comments, the first couple of seconds of comments from the Iranian Foreign Minister on this from the Munich Security Conference. So I'd be interested in your thoughts on what he had to say.
This past Monday, millions of Iranians gathered for mass rallies to mark the 40th anniversary of the Islamic Revolution, an earthquake that collapsed a pillar of US dominance in West Asia. We've never been forgiven by the United States for having exercised our right to self-determination. As a result, we have long been the target of an unhealthy fixation, let's say an obsession, which continues to this very day. The demonization of my country has been a convenient cross for 7 consecutive American presidents to bear, and even a more convenient smokescreen for America's regional clients to hide behind. It is long overdue for the United States to dismantle this malign institution, for it has today morphed into one of the greatest threats, even to America's own security and interests, let alone peace and security in the rest of the world and the region.
Does he have a point?
Yeah, he absolutely has a point. I think the great quote in that speech there by Iranian Foreign Minister Zarif is, it was a pillar, the Islamic Revolution in Iran in 1979 was a pillar that began the collapse of the US dominance and control over the Middle East, and that's exactly what happened. A lot of people aren't aware, Mike, that the largest CIA station outside the U.S. at that point was in Tehran during that period. So that was really the hub of the Cold War activities and sort of CIA intelligence network right across the Middle East in Central Asia.
Well, Mohammed Zarif went on to say this: the risk of war is great. The risk will be even greater if you continue to turn a blind eye to severe violations of international law. Israeli behaviour is putting international law on the shelf. US behaviour is putting international law on the shelf. Well, this, of course, followed this comment from Benjamin Netanyahu, who was speaking at the Warsaw Conference last week. And, of course, the usual rhetoric from him is Iranian aggression is the main factor undermining the Middle East and the entire world. We must prevent Iran from attaining nuclear weapons and block its military entrenchment in Syria. So
as Zarif was talking about the obsession. Okay?
Yes.
There it is right there. That's where the obsession comes from. Iran is the root of all bad things, of all terrorism, of all international crime, of all wars in the Middle East. This is the sort of talking point that the Israeli regime has directly wired into the brains, especially of this current administration, although this has been the case for previous administrations, but it's really bad now. So they're blaming Iran for ISIS. It's just laughable. But when you see Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and some of the caliber of some of these U.S. diplomats at the moment is quite low. So when you see Mike Pompeo out, he's saying that Hezbollah is in Venezuela with the Maduro government, which is absolutely fantasy fiction. This gives you an idea of how malleable some of these U.S. officials are. They don't know actually anything about what's going on in the world. So they're being fed constantly talking points by the Israeli lobby, by cabinet officials like John Bolton, who are also being fed by the Israeli lobby, and by the way, are not only on the payroll. In some cases, some of these Washington officials are not only on the Israeli lobby payroll or afraid of the Israeli lobby, but they're on the MEK payroll as well, the Mujahideen al-Kaq. This is the Iranian official designated opposition by the Washington deep state, which themselves are a bit of a joke, former terrorist organization that was delisted by Hillary Clinton, I believe in 2012, possibly, I'm not sure, or 2010, 2012, terrorist organization, and they pump money into the pockets of everybody. Everybody's on the MEK payroll, and so they promise the Iranian expats, the wealthy ones, the U.S. politicians say, don't worry, we're going to use the MEK to take your country back from those evil Muslim Islamists in Tehran, the mullahs. And most people buy this, and the money keeps flowing. Guess where it ends up, Mike? In the pockets of Rudy Giuliani, in the pockets of Howard Dean, in the pockets of all of these officials, congressmen and senators in the United States. So this is how Washington really works.
Okay, well, sticking with Israel then, what is the Visegrad Group?
Well, this is an interesting segue back into Israel. So this is, best way to describe this is a working bloc that was founded, I believe, in 1991. And this is comprised of Poland, Czech Republic, Hungary, and Slovakia. And the main objective of this is advancing military, I'll put NATO in parentheses there because that's really what we're talking about. These are NATO member states. Cultural, economic, energy cooperation among other European partners and furthering integration within the EU. So the key points here, Mike, and this goes back to the Munich conference.
Right.
The key points here are military and energy. Keep that in mind. Now, this is the Visegrad Group. So what has happened recently with regards to this story? Well, the big four are holding their summit, guess where? In Jerusalem, okay? This has massive diplomatic and geopolitical implications. Why? What happened in Jerusalem recently? The U.S. relocated its embassy to Jerusalem and caused a huge uproar and controversy with regards to that. Jerusalem is meant to be a neutral state. So this is Israel trying to basically give further credibility to Jerusalem as a capital. And they're using these 4 European states to do this. So this is Israel really working hard to try to pull and get influence within the Visegrad Group, but also to pull them into Israel, also to validate Jerusalem as a capital city. And this is what the leaders of Hungary, Poland, Czech Republic, and Slovakia will hold their first summit here, a move which looks like a slap in the face to the EU at a time, and the Union is trying to stick to a common position of not recognizing Israel as a capital city. You see what Israel is successfully doing here, pulling some of these more, say, peripheral states, particularly Hungary. We'll look at Hungary, and Poland as well, you could say, is having some tenuous issues with Brussels. Okay, so there's Israel right in the middle, working it basically from a political and geopolitical point of view. So here's the Israeli interim foreign minister, Israel Katz, and this is what he said recently. In memory of the Holocaust, something we cannot compromise about, it is clear we won't forgive or forget, he said. And he goes even further here with this. Poles collaborated with the Nazis, definitely. They suckle anti-Semitism with their mother's milk. He said this in a recent interview, and he didn't stop there. The Poles took part in the extermination of Jews in the Holocaust, Poland became the biggest cemetery of Jewish people. So why is this important? The timing of this with the
Visegrad Group
meeting. So what has happened? This is basically the Polish Prime Minister has pulled out of the Jerusalem summit, of the Visegrad Jerusalem summit. So, and the Polish Prime Minister has basically called these remarks by the Israeli Foreign Minister racist and unacceptable. This is from Prime Minister Morawiecki. So he is pulled out. I think he's sending probably his lower level minister in replacement. So definitely Poland's taken umbrage to these remarks. Where did these remarks come from? Well, guess who got the ball rolling? Benjamin Netanyahu got the ball rolling on this. And so clearly his ministers are following suit, Mike. So this was already, Netanyahu raised some remarks about Poland's controversial Holocaust law, which it passed a few, I think last year. And this is a law, look at this law, this is quite amazing, Mike. So whoever accuses the Polish nation, the Polish state, or for being responsible or complicit in the Nazi crimes committed by the Third German Reich shall be subject to fine or penalty of imprisonment of up to 3 years. So according to Polish officials, the original spirit behind this was to reclaim Poland's good name. So for to oppose the very thing that the Israeli officials are dragging Poland through the coals 75 years after the Holocaust. So they've decriminalized it. I think it's now a civil penalty, Mike. It's no longer criminal under intense pressure this past summer. So this is quite extraordinary. So you can see this is the reaction from some of the Israeli press. Dear Poland, your Holocaust law fools no one forgets. This is Bradley Burson saying, just as nobody forgets the thousands of Poles who saved Jews during the war, nobody forgets those Polish neighbors who ratted out the Jewish family next door, or the thousands of Poles who aided the Nazis in other ways. So you can see there's a clear political agenda here to put salt in the wounds of World War II, based to reopen some of these potential divisions. And Israel's clearly doing this on many levels, diplomatically, with the Visegrad Group here, and with its ministers, and of course in their press as well, Mike. So it is an interesting.
Do we have any idea why they're doing this?
It's difficult to say. I think Israel wants allies, and they certainly have one in Hungary. I think there's a common alignment in terms of the more nationalist European states and the ones opposing immigration, and Israel's pandering to them for closer relationships, Mike. But the elephant in the room is Israel is directly involved in stoking a lot of the policy from, say, the U.S. and the Iraq War to start with, and Libya and Syria that's causing and has contributed to the migrant crisis. And this is the thing that Hungary opposes so vehemently, being on the European frontier. So Israel's playing both sides of this equation historically, and I think I'm not sure why they're doing it, but the energy partnership component of the Visegrad Group is something to pay very close attention to, because there are proven gas reserves off the Leviathan gas fields in Israel. There's also the same with Lebanon and Cyprus. And so between Turkey, Israel, Europe, Cyprus, and the other states, including Syria and Lebanon, and Gaza, by the way, off the coast of Gaza, occupied Gaza. So the energy component in terms of gas supplies to Europe is still very much in play in the long term, not in the short term. Russia has the South Stream and the Turk Stream pipelines that are moving into Bulgaria. So Russia has a huge head start with regards to natural gas supply directly into Europe for the Nord Stream and the South Stream pipeline network. So, but long term, there's massive gas reserves in the Mediterranean, in the Levant, off the coast of Levant. So I think it might have something to do possibly with this as well.
Okay, and in the meantime, excuse me, anti-Semitism rising sharply right across Europe?
Well, that's what they say, Mike. A number of these studies have come out and are being collated by the likes of The Guardian. So this is the question: is this a real trend, or how is this data being manipulated and packaged to reach a dramatic conclusion? That's what this article is basically inferring here, that there is a trend and there's some steep rise in anti-Semitism right across Europe, and that it's ostensibly coming from right-wing sources and so forth. So, and this is an interesting debate, Mike. If you want to get down and look at the cases and how they're labeled, from incidents to physical violence to violent, attacks and so forth, a lot of this is very interesting. Certainly, it's not an empirical study if it's being packaged in The Guardian. What The Guardian's doing is collating statistics from different news sources and different reports to give this idea of this conclusion. So the question, Mike, is, and we spoke about this on the Sunday Wire last night, if as some people are positing that the anti-Semitism problem is coming from, let's put the labor anti-Semitic thing off to the side, because that's pretty much been debunked as a trope by a lot of people. So being pro-Palestinian is not being anti-Semitic. Hence, Jeremy Corbyn is not an anti-Semite because he supports the Palestinian cause or criticizes Israeli foreign policy. The question is, how serious is the threat of anti-Semitism from the so-called right, the alt-right or the far right? And this is an interesting question because you have characters like Tommy Robinson, who received tremendous support and financial support from Zionist organizations right across the spectrum, Jewish organizations who support or fund him from the UK, from Canada, from the United States. And so he is the face of the far right, am I wrong, in Britain. He's the kind of mascot.
That's how he's being presented, for sure.
This is how he's being presented. So he's got total support from Israel. He's a self-professed Zionist. So how do you square this argument that anti-Semitism is coming from the right if the Zionist political and organizations are supporting and funding elements of the far right? It doesn't quite add up, Mike, and I think it deserves a lot more research and certainly more questioning.
Absolutely. Now, you suggest that we can forget about anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. Well, that's not exactly correct, is it? Because, well, this morning, as the BBC is reporting here, 7 MPs have left the Labour Party in protest at Jeremy Corbyn's leadership and his approach to Brexit and anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. This is the reason that they've left, they say. So who have we got here? Chuka Umunna, Luciana Berger, Chris Leslie, Angela Smith, Mike Gapes, Gavin Shuker and Anne Coffey. Luciana Berger said that Labour had become institutionally anti-Semitic and she was embarrassed and ashamed to stay. Well, Jeremy Corbyn says he's disappointed about that they've left. They're apparently not going to launch a new political party. They are going to sit in Parliament as they're calling themselves the Independent Group. Chuka Umunna said that that they've taken the first step. He didn't say what they'd taken the first step towards, but this is the first step. And he's urging other Labour MPs to join them in building a new politics. Politics is broken, he said. It doesn't have to be this way. Let's change it. Okay, so they're going to change it. What was the response from George Galloway? Let's just have a look at this. The 7 dwarfs are merely the first to jump. This has been long planned and will be the start of something, not the end. Be prepared for a coordinated, choreographed dance of treachery. So what's going on here? Well, of course, our illustrious leader from the past, Tony Blair.
There he is.
Yes. Now, he didn't actually say what's on screen at the moment. This is what he would have said probably if I'd asked him. He said, he would have said, I'm behind this. My new radical centrist party is going to take over the world with a snigger. Now, of course, Chuka Umunna saying that they're not going to set up a new party, but they may join a party which may appear in the not too distant future.
That's just a satire quote, right?
Absolutely a satire quote for sure.
He didn't say that. But Tony, he doesn't go away, Mike, does he, very easily? He's like a rash, or dare I say, there's worse things than rashes that don't go away. That's Tony Blair. amazing that he's still around.
He's still around and
working his dark arts in the background.
Being as promoted as hard by the BBC as they can possibly promote him. So this is the first thing. Now, the issue here, Patrick, is that, of course, Jeremy Corbyn needs to get rid of the Blairite faction within the Labour Party if he's going to make, and within the parliamentary Labour Party, if he's going to make any progress at all. He is spending, a bit like Trump in this respect, he is spending so much time faction fighting within his own party that he's not able to make any serious progress. And also he's not actually able to express his, this is my observation, he's not able to express his policies in an honest way because he's constantly having to try to mitigate the potential effects of the potential blowback from some of the Blairite types within his own party. So we've heard over the last number of months the possibility that he might organise for constituency parties to deselect some of the MPs that are currently sitting and replace them with alternative candidates for in a future general election. In fact, what these 7 have done, and if they're joined by others, what they've done is that they've done Jeremy Corbyn's job for him. He now doesn't have to take that stand. I think this is brilliant for Corbyn, actually,
so
in the long term.
They've deselected themselves.
They've deselected themselves as Labour Party candidates. And I think that they may get a shock at the next general election if they think they're going to stand as independents and win the seat and keep the seats that they've held. They may well get a bit of a surprise.
Because isn't the important thing in a democracy, it's not what these apparently the 7 musketeers or dwarfs are acting on conscience, on their conscience.
That's
right?
what they're implying.
That's
yes.
what they're implying. But that's not really what's important. What's important is what the constituents who elected them to do, and what auspices they elected them under. And certainly they probably didn't elect them to try to split up the Labour Party. And so that's how, it depends how this is going to be viewed, Mike, in the national discourse, in the press. Are these 7 going to be viewed as these reformers, or are they going to be viewed as provocateurs in the breakup of the Labour Party? And I think it's going to be the latter, more likely. That's what I think, unless 100 more jump ship, and that's not necessarily likely, is it?
I don't think there's too many grassroots Labour Party supporters are going to shed any tears over this. So
the votes aren't going to be there in the next election. It doesn't look like it.
No. Now, let's come back onto the issue of disinformation. This is the House of Commons Digital Culture, Media and Sports Select Committee have produced their final report on disinformation and fake news. Well, what are they calling for? They're calling for compulsory code of ethics for tech companies overseen by an independent regulator. I think we heard that from someone else in the last week or so, but anyway, we'll come on to that in a second. Regulator given powers to launch legal action against tech companies breaching the code. The government to reform current electoral communications laws and rules on overseas involvement in UK elections. I'm not certain that that's absolutely proven that there has been any overseas involvement in UK elections, but I think we know who they're talking about. Social media companies obliged to take down known sources of harmful content, including proven sources of disinformation. Now, Patrick, this is the biggest, this last point here is the biggest piece of concern for me, because this comes back to what we were saying last week with the Cairn Cross review, and we'll remind people about that in a second. But social media companies obliged to take down known sources of harmful content. Known by whom? Who decides? Including proven sources of disinformation. Proven sources? Proven by whom? Now, we're going to come on to an article at the very end of the programme today, which is one of the most egregious pieces of disinformation that I've seen in a very long time. It's going to be difficult for people to digest this because it's a contentious subject, but we're going to come back to this point, Patrick, that disinformation, the majority of it, is coming from the mainstream media. And so clearly the Select Committee here, in suggesting that social media companies are responsible and obliged, in fact, by law to take down known sources of content, we've got to ask the question, who decides?
So what they're doing is trying to impose not a law, but a draconian code, Mike. A draconian code. The Star Chamber is going to come up with a code of ethics or some sort of a code of conduct for social media or for tech companies. What they're doing is threatening firms with the threats of fines according to this code that is almost impossible to adhere to, and it will be completely arbitrary in the end on the political whims of who's interpreting it, by the way. And also it'll be arbitrary and to the whims of whichever way the political wind is blowing at the time. What is the zeitgeist at the time? Is it outrage over Donald Trump defeating Hillary Clinton? Is it Russian disinformation, which the Trump and the Russia issue are married, actually.
Yeah.
But this could be different. It could be an Iranian-Israeli issue in 5 or 10 years, or a war issue in the next big war that the NATO member states decide to kick off if they do.
Which is probably going to be Iran.
Which could be Iran. So they're threatening firms to basically go into hot button censorship mode. So in other words, Facebook's going to be taking stuff down left, right, and center just to avoid all the regulatory and fine regimes. Okay, so, but it's not just the proven disinformation. How are they going to prove what is a source of disinformation? Are they going to use internet guides? Are they going to use NewsGuard? Are they going to depend on Snopes? Who knows? Are they going to use an algorithm to do this? Who knows? So the other question, Mike, then is overseas involvement in elections. What is overseas? What is involvement? And what are elections? Does that mean that any commentary on any candidate during any election cycle in the UK is going to be construed, if it comes from a foreign journalist or a foreign commentator or a foreign channel? Does that mean that, does that constitute involvement or meddling in a UK election? Again, this will be most likely interpreted completely arbitrarily, and depending on whatever the prevailing political power set is, whichever direction the winds are blowing at that time, what is the zeitgeist of the day in terms of what is divisive in politics. That's how, more than likely, how these things are going to be applied. They're not going to be applied in a scientific way, in an objective way. It's impossible, because what they're asking, Mike, is almost impossible to prove objectively. What this is trying to take down what is essentially the last bastions of free speech, the last bastions of the free press, and put this completely under the control, at least the threat of the control, from the state, from Silicon Valley, from the mainstream media. So that's exactly what it looks like here.
Well, just remember that last week Dame Frances Cairncross released her report, also taking place over the last 12 months, her review. And on the media show on Radio 4 on Wednesday afternoon, it was this particular issue of social media platforms making the decision about what is disinformation and what is not, which caused her, clearly caused her difficulty, because it was during that question that she was stumbling over her words. The rest of it, she was reasonably felt on safe grounds, clearly, by the way she was presenting herself. But on this issue, she did not feel on terribly safe ground. So anyway, getting back to the report itself, the the Select Committee saying that electoral law is not fit for purpose. It has to be updated. And they claim that Facebook intentionally and knowingly violated both data privacy and anti-competition laws. That may well be the case, but I'm not certain how that is related to disinformation. But anyway,
that's part of the Cambridge Analytica.
Yes, that's true.
Which is in many ways a red herring, Mike. The Cambridge Analytica thing, and they're using Cambridge Analytica as a club to beat, Facebook and these companies over the head to get them to comply more. It's another attack vector that the state has appropriated in order to sort of drive the real agenda. The real agenda, Mike, is censorship. That's the real goal.
Well, absolutely. So let's just look at what Damien Collins had to say in this. Our inquiry over the last year has identified 3 big threats to our society. The challenge for the next year ahead is to start to fix them. We cannot delay any longer. They're determined to press ahead with this.
We must act now.
They must act now, is exactly what he's saying.
We have to act now before it's too late.
He went on to be concerned about personalised dark adverts from unidentified sources, unidentifiable sources, that companies like Facebook exercise massive market power, which enables them to make money by bullying smaller technology companies.
Like the UK column.
Well, exactly. We need a radical shift in the balance of power between the platforms and the people. The age of inadequate self-regulation must come to an end. And we also repeat our call to the government to make a statement about how many investigations are currently being carried out into Russian interference in UK politics. We want to find out what the impact of disinformation and voter manipulation on past elections, including UK referendum 2016, and are calling on the government to launch an independent investigation. So there you go.
So they're pushing the Brexit Russia canard.
Yes.
Just like the U.S., the Democratic Party is pushing the Trump-Russia collusion canard. It's exactly the same thing. What they're doing, what Damian Collins is attempting to do is disenfranchise millions of voters who went out and voted in the Brexit referendum, just as Adam Schiff and the Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic Party and the Hillary Clinton campaign are attempting to disenfranchise millions of Americans who went out to vote for Donald Trump. You might not like who they voted for. You might not like the fact that millions of Britons voted for Brexit, but they did get out. A referendum was offered, right, legally. People came out, they voted, and now they're being attempted to be disenfranchised or erased or told they were under the influence of Moscow, which is absolutely bonkers as a concept. It's going to be very difficult to prove that a few fake news articles or adverts kicking around on social media actually influenced people to vote a certain way. That's an incredible study you're going to have to... It could take 10 or 20 years to find some empirical data at the end of that that's compelling. But the assumption's already been made. People have already come to that conclusion. Ministers have already enacted policies, Mike, already now for a couple of years that have already taken that conclusion on board anyway. Yeah. So what I think they're looking for is more validation, because they don't seem super confident about these very dangerous policies which they're attempting to push onto the public right now, which essentially is regulation of the press, regulation of the internet, regulation of social media, regulation of speech, etc.
Well, if Damian Collins and Dame Frances Cairncross are calling for Facebook and Twitter to do more, well, in fact, they're already doing it to a certain degree, aren't they?
Yes, they're doing more. Facebook has just blocked a couple of major popular viral video accounts here, and one of those is Soapbox, Waste Ed, and there's another one as well. So they're part of offshoots of In the Now. This was a popular program on RT, and the person behind this, of the CEO of Mafic Media, is Anissa Anawi. She's an award-winning presenter from RT, former host of In the Now, and this is what she said. Facebook has blocked all of Mafic's pages, including In the Now, after CNN, quote, investigated. So the corporate news outlet now claims that Facebook will require us to have a disclaimer about our funding. And she's talking about funding from RT or TV Novosti, or one of the Russian government-aligned media bodies. And this is unprecedented discrimination, as Facebook doesn't require any of its pages to do the same. CNN does mention our high video quality, tens of millions of views, though. So thanks for the plug, she said. So that's Anissa Anawi here. So what happened is, Mike, this didn't just happen organically. CNN lobbied Facebook to take down these video accounts.
So the biggest media company in the United States is lobbying the biggest social media company in the United States to remove their competition?
Not only that, CNN is lobbying a Silicon Valley company to take down factually accurate content, Mike. They haven't pointed out any of the facts presented on any of Anissa Anawi's media outlets here that produce really punchy viral videos. They do target a millennial demographic, because you can tell from the style, okay? But it's not unlike the things that you see on the BBC, Al Jazeera, or even CNN in some cases, or MSNBC. It's the same type of style. It's just done with probably a little more savvy in terms of a geopolitical worldview. This, I think, is what's really upsetting the CNNs of the world. So let's look at how this went down. So this is the person one of the people in the middle here behind this. This is a Russian hybrid warfare expert and a lovely lady by all indications. Her name is Molly McHugh, and she teaches hybrid warfare and how to be safe from the Russians at Georgetown University. And this is what she tweeted yesterday. She was gloating about taking down all the In the Now and Anisa Nawi's company accounts there. She says, "I have been lax this week in thanking Donnie." She's talking about Donnie O'Sullivan, CNN's tech and technology correspondent. She says, "I've been lax in thanking Donnie for finally getting Facebook to take down Kremlin-funded viral video propaganda garbage dump In the Now news as our friends at European Values." The European Values is one of these German Marshall Fund U.S. propaganda dispensaries. There's many of them, but I think that's what they are. They have been documenting for years. Good riddance, she said. So she's charming, as you can see, and she says, and maybe now he can interview all the members of Congress that promoted Rania Khalek and In the Now and ask if they knew what they were pushing Kremlin propaganda. So this is one of the journalists, Rania Khalek, who does a lot of videos for Anisa Nawi. Molly McHugh saying that Donnie should go and troll those members of Congress who shared her videos on Facebook, which are Kremlin propaganda. So this is completely disingenuous, and this is the technique that everybody is using to censor, basically, that because something comes from RT or from Russia or from somewhere behind the Eastern European former Iron Curtain, that this is somehow Kremlin propaganda. They don't say whether the content is factually accurate, is historically accurate, whether the analysis is sound. They don't comment on any of this. They just slap a label on it, which is disinformation. Russia, bad. Russia, disinformation. Kremlin propaganda. So, but as we said earlier in the program, Mike, it's a historical fact that the primary source of fake news and disinformation throughout history, in fact, right back to the beginning of the printing press, is Western mainstream corporate media and Western government agencies. This is the #1 proven historical source. There's academic papers written on this. There's number of people have documented. There's books written on this. We can't just erase this fact. Okay, so in terms of propaganda, there's nothing that holds a candle at the moment, at this particular time, to CNN in terms of broadcast television, in terms of actively pushing fake stories, fabricated news, completely fraudulent news reporting. Okay, then you can add the Washington Post, the New York Times, NBC News, CBS, Vice News, BuzzFeed. NBC. You can throw all this into one basket, Mike, and the total weight of the disinformation, the propaganda, and the fake news coming from those media outlets that I've just mentioned is gargantuan in its scale.
Yeah.
And these viral videos produced by Anisa Nawi are not even in the league in terms of impact, but they're much more factually accurate than a lot of the reports that are produced by CNN.
Okay, now, I should probably offer a health warning at this point because we're about to put an image up which may cause some people to have some kind of fit.
It's very disturbing.
It is. Other people may laugh to such a degree that they cause themselves a physical injury. So here is Action Man himself, Gavin Williamson. Now, this is from Lucy Fisher, who's Sunday Times reporter. And she says on Twitter here, great weekend with the Royal Marines in the Arctic Circle. They practiced their legendary icebreaker drill in which they jumped into glacial pools of water, cut into the ice shelf before clawing their way out with their ski poles. Gavin Williamson gave it a go too. So there you've got Gavin Williamson on screen. I'm not sure whether he's enjoying himself or whether he's actually crying and begging for people to pull him out. But anyway, he took part apparently. And that was followed up, according to Lucy Fisher, that following that there were tots of rum and a toast to the Queen. So there you go. That's what Gavin was doing over the weekend.
And he probably felt exhilarated, Mike, because it's probably one of the greatest things that he's ever done.
Yeah, so in the chat box they're asking could they not have pushed him back in. But anyway, that's beside the point. He was toasting the Queen. There we go. He is a patriot, apparently. Or is he? Because also over the weekend, of course, he was speaking at the Munich Security Conference. So let's have a look at what he was saying. We have delivered European security long before the creation of either the European Union or NATO, and we will continue to deliver it when we leave the EU. He said, with the signing of the UK-Germany joint vision statement last October, it's obvious to both that there is much more to achieve as two nations. So, of course, this was taking place in Germany. So I just want to start here by explaining a little bit about what we now have as a result of this joint vision statement with Germany, because, of course, here is the UK and France and Germany. And the UK now, since 2010, the Lancaster House Treaty, and in 2018, the Sandhurst Treaties, plus the activities of the Franco-British Council, we've got very close defence ties between Britain and France. In fact, it's a 50-year defence pact, so we are fully integrated with the French in that respect. The French have, as you know, in the last couple of weeks, signed the Aachen Treaty, so they now are integrated in defence matters, as well as many other matters. And in fact, the Sandhurst treaties between Britain and France are pretty much link us together with the French, very much to the same degree as the Aachen Treaty does between the French and the Germans. Now, with respect to Britain and France, it's at this point only a joint vision statement, but nonetheless, we're moving in the direction of a similar type of treaty between us and Germany. So this seems to be the core of European defence, and any British MP or British member of the House of Lords that doesn't get this or that tries to wriggle around this is being disingenuous at the very least, or they simply don't know, and if they don't know, they better inform themselves very quickly. It's not like people aren't telling them. People are telling them. People are forwarding MPs the UK column's European Defence Union timeline, and generally MPs are saying there's nothing to see here. Well, in fact, there is plenty to see here, and in fact, as we've pointed out on the website, on the UK column website, this has been British government policy since 1948, possibly before, but certainly since 1948. And so for any British MP to suggest that Britain is not going to be involved in European defence, like I say, they're being disingenuous. Let's go on with what Gavin had to say, though. He said it's important that an EU which shuts out non-EU NATO allies from capability development will only weaken its own industry base and capabilities it wishes to develop. Now, what's he referring to here? Well, he's concerned that post-Brexit, should we end up with a no deal, for example, that the EU would then cut British defence companies out of the EU defence complex. This is something that Britain does not want to see, because this is part of British policy as well.
Who's he talking about? Non-EU NATO allies?
That's what he's talking about.
He's talking about Britain.
He's talking about Britain.
We could also be talking about the United States as well, because they want a piece of the defence pie, don't they?
Absolutely. Yeah. But I think he's primarily talking about Britain here. So anyway, but he goes on and he says, but as Ursula, that's Ursula von der Leyen, the German defence minister, as Ursula and I agreed when we met at NATO earlier this week, Europeans should not be spending 2% of GDP on defence for America. We should be spending it for ourselves and our security. There is no question in Gavin Williamson's mind that Britain is going to be part of European Defence Union, because he's saying it there right in front of your eyes if you're reading this on screen. We should be spending it for ourselves, not for yourselves, not for the Europeans, for ourselves and our security.
So this is clearly a statement made in the direction of away from NATO and towards military unification.
Absolutely.
Doesn't it look like that?
It doesn't look like it. It is it. There is no question that that's what he means. And he goes on to say, NATO matters more than ever because an old adversary is back in the game. 30 years since the Berlin Wall fell and 5 years since the illegal annexation of Crimea, Russia remains a threat to our security. He said, we remain open to a different kind of relationship with Russia, and options of dialogue remain on the table. It's vital that we always work to avoid escalation and avert risks of miscalculation. He said, and we encourage Russia to start acting within the rules-based international order, step back from the path that has been taken and look to a new and different way. So he is still, of course, reinforcing the need for NATO because Russia is a nasty big ally. But as we've been highlighting over for 3 years now, NATO and the EU are completely they understand each other's positions, and they are working very hard to make sure that there's no duplication of effort and that everything is done within a proper framework. So that's not a problem. So finally, then, he said, we will continue to deliver European security. Once again, he reiterates that we are completely determined to maintain European security. Britain will be a full part of military union. And it's time for MPs in this country to start recognising that.
I think it's interesting, he's saying the illegal annexation of Crimea, they don't recognize, they don't like referendums, full stop. I see this is kind of a trend within the plutocracy in Britain. They don't like the Brexit referendum results. They don't like the referendum in the Crimea. I think it was 90%, 92% or something like Crimeans voted to reunify with Russia. Russia didn't annex Crimea. They voted to rejoin Russia, which they were actually part of Russia before 1954. That's something Gavin Williamson's probably not fully aware of, that history, because obviously his history book starts at 1954. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
But in terms of the rules-based international order, I'll just say this, that Russia is absolutely in compliance with the rules-based international order, especially the Russian fireplaces, and Gavin should know this, Russian fireplaces that are produced for the home are in full compliance of European ISO standards. So yeah, they're totally in compliance in terms of the fireplace industry.
Right.
So that's just something, Gavin would know that, wouldn't he? Or he would. He should. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, we got to leave it there for today. We are going to be doing a UK column news extra time straight after this, and that'll be up on the UK column forums and on 21wire.tv as soon as possible this afternoon. So hopefully you'll get to see that if you're a member of UK column or 21st Century Wire. In the meantime, we will be back on Wednesday as usual at 1 p.m. So thank you very much, Patrick, for joining us. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you then. Bye-bye.